So Bloxburg is really cracking down on who they have in their content creator program, and they actually kicked out one of the biggest YouTubers from their program yesterday, and that YouTuber went ahead and made a video about the situation, which wasn't necessarily super well received. And so we're going to talk about it, as well as just some issues with being a content creator in these kind of programs, and how programs aren't always necessarily the best thing for you. So with that in mind, please keep in mind that the information presented from the video that I'm going to be discussing is this creator's opinion and their experiences. It does not mean that it's factual or that is 100% accurate. This is their impression of what happened, and they are entitled to their opinions, of course. And so I'm just relaying what they've said. So with that in mind, for those that don't know, there's a creator by the name of Ashley the Unicorn with 1.4 million subscribers on YouTube. So she's not an insignificant creator. She's a very popular creator, and she was known, at least in previous years, for being a Bloxburg YouTuber among other games. And she was, very active in the Bloxburg community, and more so recently has been gearing more towards dress to impress content. And she released a video yesterday titled "Bloxburg removed me from their creator program. This is why." And there was a lot of mixed opinions in the comment section, but before we get too much into it, I do want to clarify what the content creator program is. So we have a wiki here, which basically says the program was organized by the new development team after the game was purchased by a separate group, which happened a couple years ago now. And basically there's a bunch of community backlash regarding certain things like the fainting feature they added and all these different builds and stuff, and players weren't happy. And so part of them rectifying that was adding content creator programs so that content creators or influencers could basically act as advocates or like people to, share information from the public to the game and to relay information, basically work as kind of free advertisement and, help diffuse situations, which I have my own opinions about this, which I'll get into later. But regardless, the content creator program, according to the wiki, had 25 creators in it and now only has 24 to my understanding. And there was quite a few creators in this program that had very, very big Roblox YouTube channels. So you can see that a lot of them have 1 million subscribers, or some with 46,000, etc., right? And Ashley the Unicorn was one of the biggest creators in this platform, and she was kicked out a couple days ago, and they gave her some interesting reasons as to why. Now, in her video, she does kind of go over her experience in Bloxburg and how her goal on her channel is always to be, forthcoming and honest. And that's a sentiment I can share. Before I accepted the invitation to the Monsterverse content creator program, I want to make very, very sure that I could still be honest. And I think I've been critical of Monsterverse and I've been honest about my opinions. And I certainly think that some of these games, not necessarily speaking to Bloxburg, but some games just want people to be an echo chamber and just constantly, spew positive things about their game. And I think that's not what a content creator program should be. If you just have everybody acting as an echo chamber where they're just regurgitating the same ideas and not holding you accountable, you're not going to actually achieve anything. It's just going to be a loop of endless noise where nothing's happening. And I just think that's absolutely useless. And there's no point in having a content creator program in that sense, right? So that's why I joined the Monsterverse program, because I was invited, and the rules didn't say anything about not being able to share my opinion. It's just said you have to, be, kind to everybody and don't be mean. So obviously I'm not being mean when I share my opinion. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind here. Now, in Ashley's video, she did let the audience know that she, I guess, spoke with a lawyer, which I think is definitely something that is really important in these kinds of situations, because Bloxburg had her sign an NDA, which an NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement, which, not to say it's a red flag, I don't think so, but when people get you to sign an NDA, it's basically meant to keep things a secret. And it's a legally binding contract, which basically makes it so that you can't repeat certain things. If you do, you're subject to legal repercussions, like being sued for damages, etc. And so a lot of these creators, especially higher, follower accounts and stuff like that, when they're working with really popular games, such as Ashley the Unicorn, are required to sign NDAs in order to get, sneak peek access at stuff, because obviously the game doesn't want you leaking stuff to other developers and them stealing ideas, because it's a business, right, at the end of the day? But me personally, I would never sign an NDA, and that's just my personal, that's my stance on this stuff. If I was being asked to sign an NDA, I would not sign it, because I always want to have the ability to be honest and to share my opinions. And if a group is actually trying to keep things a secret or kind of trying to silence what I can and cannot say, that to me is kind of a red flag. I understand maybe it could have been because of the updates and stuff like that, but personally, I would never sign an NDA, especially if I'm like in a collaboration with the game, because I feel like, why do you not want me to be honest? Like, I'm not going to sit here and be free advertisement for you forever. Like, it's kind of weird. But regardless, I don't sign NDAs. That's just my personal choice. And, for anybody who maybe does want to do collaborations with games, I'd recommend that you consult a lawyer before signing any NDAs. Sorry, my pet just jumped. But consult a lawyer before you sign any NDA, specifically a social media lawyer. I have a social media lawyer for my channel, and I ask them questions as I see fit, just to ensure that you're doing what's best for you and your channel. But regardless, she said she couldn't show us the actual email that she received from the Bloxburg team, but she was able to directly copy and paste the exact reasons that Bloxburg provided for her being kicked out of the program. And these reasons are interesting, and she highlighted them in her YouTube channel. So the first reason was to maintain an active and engaged presence on social media platforms relevant to the Bloxburg community, such as YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, and others, with at least 8 Bloxburg-related posts a month. And Ashley the Unicorn was pretty transparent and said, yeah, you know what? I haven't been posting that much. It seems like more so recently she's switched towards a dress to impress kind of content, which that is just a given. I think people always like call people, what is it, like train hoppers, or like people who are just like trying to clout chase and stuff like that. But the truth is, as a creator, you have to follow what your content or what your audience wants to see. If you're just regurgitating content that nobody wants to see, you're not going to get any views. And so if you are like an actual like content creator that wants to take YouTube seriously, you sometimes have to kind of shift your channel as your interests change and as the interests of your community changes to accommodate your community. Because at the end of the day, your job is to create content that your community enjoys. And so I don't think it's fair for anybody to be judging Ashley the Unicorn because she makes dress to impress videos now. Obviously, as you create content, your interests change. Nobody should be forced into creating content that they don't like, especially if her audience is really liking the dress to impress content, which is what it seems like. Her audience really seems to enjoy the dress to impress content. And so I think it was weird. There's some people in the comment section of this video that were like, oh my god, like you're just clout chasing to try and play dress to impress. And I'm like, what are you talking about right now? Like that makes absolutely no sense. But regardless, she did agree at this first point here. It was valid. She doesn't make a ton of videos, which, you know, fair enough. I feel like they could have left it at that, but then they decided to add 3 more points. And I don't know. I personally, if I was like trying to cut ties with a massive YouTuber who has a lot of influence, personally, I don't know if I'd highlight absolutely every single reason as to why they're leaving the program. I would just highlight the most surface level one, just so there wasn't like any drama or stuff like that. But I guess maybe they were trying to put everything in writing. I don't know. But the second point they added here was not to share information that is exclusively communicated to content creators. It is not meant to be shared with the public. And so in Ashley the Unicorn's video, which again, I will have linked in the description below, she discusses how she did a Bloxburg live stream. And in that live stream, she used the Bloxburg winter logo in the, I guess, picture or the thumbnail for that live stream. And while she was streaming, she received a message about, hey, that wasn't supposed to be out, take it down please. And she says that she did the live stream 1 hour before it became live, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. But during the live stream, she said that a moderator said they would change the thumbnail for her because she was having trouble, and I guess it took longer than expected, and Bloxburg wasn't happy with that. Now, some of the comments I saw in the comment section were people accusing her of being disrespectful during the live stream. I don't know, I wasn't there in the live stream. I think maybe people can be sensitive at times, so I'm not quite sure exactly what was said or what was relayed, or if people misinterpreted things or whatever. But this is what she highlighted as being the reason for her sharing information that's not meant to be shared, was her posting a logo an hour before the logo went live, which personally, I think this stuff happens. People, you know, make mistakes, that stuff happens. Personally, I probably would have ended the stream and just restarted it, but I understand, like, as a creator, like, obviously you want to keep players or viewers, you know, engaged with their content, and that might, you know, kind of damage the viewership, and it's confusing to navigate all that stuff, especially when you're live streaming. Personally, I find live streaming very overwhelming, and so I understand how that would be challenging, but certainly I think if I was notified that I was sharing something that was basically, it sounds like against the NDA, I'm not quite sure though, I would have immediately taken down the stream and tried to rectify that, because I don't want to be getting in no legal trouble, but that's just my 2 cents. Now, on top of that, there's a third reason: uphold respectful and positive behavior both in-game and within the community. So I guess here they're basically saying that she's been toxic. I'm gonna be very transparent. I don't really watch Ashley the Unicorn. It's just not really my kind of content. I don't play Dress to Impress. I'm not super engaged with that community. I just found her video because it actually was sent to me by one of you guys, and you guys asked me to talk about it, which thank you. I will credit you down below. But I'm not quite sure what they mean by respectful and positive behavior, because I skimmed a couple of her videos. I didn't think she was toxic. I don't know. Maybe there's a specific situation that they are linking here or referencing. I don't know. But from the content I watched, she doesn't seem to be toxic. I guess, like, there's a lot of issues with people being honest and people perceiving that as toxicity, especially on my channel. Like, people say, oh my god, Pommy, you're so nasty, you're a bully, you're this, you're that, just because I'm being honest about my opinions. If people can't be honest about their opinions, then you just want people to regurgitate the same ideas as you, and that doesn't provoke any growth or critical thinking. Like, what are you doing? So I think people can be very sensitive, especially when there's games that they like and they're facing criticism. So I'm not sure if maybe people misinterpreted things she said, or if she actually said something rude. But personally, from the content I saw, all I saw was someone who's being honest about their opinions, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. Now, on top of that, she shared that the final point was share valuable feedback, ideas, and report any bugs you find to help enhance the overall game experience. So I was watching the video, and I'm not going to necessarily paraphrase what she said, but my interpretation of what she said was, I guess Bloxburg was upset that she was, I guess, making videos talking about certain things she didn't like or discussing criticisms and stuff like that, and they would have preferred she handled that privately, which this is like kind of mimicking the sort of situation with Call Me Haley with Royal High, where she would criticize the game and the game would get upset that she didn't bring it to them privately, but then when she brought it to them privately, nothing was done. And that was something that this creator also mentioned, that was when they would bring things to their attention, I guess, privately, that according to them, things weren't rectified. So the only way to do it was through public pressure, which I think is a pretty common theme with Roblox development firms and Roblox games. at least from my experience, is that if you don't bring awareness to things publicly, which I don't necessarily believe in cancel culture and thing like that, I think it can be very toxic, but a lot of the time games, especially like Roblox as a whole, with the whole schlep situation, if there had not been that public pushback, they would have just banned schlep and moved on with it, and there would have been countless dangerous people still on the platform, and Chris Hansen wouldn't have gotten involved, and the news wouldn't have gotten involved, and the US government wouldn't have gotten involved. But it's because of the social media pressure and the accountability that Roblox had to actually own up to what they're doing and stop going on their whole power trip kind of thing. And so I do think that accountability is really important. I think it's important, though, to address people with respect regardless of what they've done. And I think it's bizarre to me when games want everything to be so hush hush. Like, personally, if I find an issue, obviously I will share it with you, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to then talk about it on YouTube. Like, I'm allowed to do that, freedom of speech, I have a right to do that on my channel. But regardless, I guess that's what she was referencing here, that she felt like when she was sharing ideas or bugs or whatever privately, that things weren't handled quick enough or they weren't handled efficiently, and so she would share them on her channel. I guess they didn't like that, from what I understood. Now, for my own personal experience, I have been approached by a handful of games asking me to do advertisements for them. One of which, guys, shocking, was an actual legitimate collaboration with Roblox that was asking me to advertise their thing for free, which was crazy because their game, they're like a multi-million-dollar company, and the game is actually making them money. So that was weird, and I politely declined. But there was one specific instance, which I'm not going to name the game or anything like that, but a lot of you guys have been asking me to make a video about this game, and I have not done it for one reason: because the owner was rude to me. I got, when my channel was like 9,000 subscribers or something, I got this ticket, and it was basically this person telling me how important they were, and maybe they didn't mean for it to come across this way, but it just kind of came across like, I'm so important, you should respect me. And I was kind of like, well, respect is earned, not given. I don't care who you are or who you're associated with. Let's just, start on the same terms. It felt like a power trip kind of to me, which is just the way I interpreted it. Maybe I misinterpreted it, I don't know. But they basically were like, yeah, I'm making this game. And the game was really cool. I'm gonna be honest, the game is pretty cool. And they were basically saying they want me to make videos about the game. I was like, okay. And they invited me to this influencer server, and I never agreed to make videos. Keep that in mind. I was like, they're like, I'll invite you to the server and show you more. I'm like, okay. They invite me to this influencer server, and there's tons of people in it. And I'm looking, and there's channels with I don't know, there's just very specific descriptions of what content they wanted made. Specific hooks, specific things they wanted to say. They wanted people to utilize this person's, standing in the developer community to basically preach the game because this person is so important and all this sort of stuff. And I don't know, I just kind of got the vibe that it was a very controlling environment, which was just my perception. And I asked them, hey, so are people compensated for this? Because it seems like you have some pretty specific requirements as to what you want them to say, what you want them to do. And they're like, oh no, they're not strict requirements. And they seem to almost get defensive and angry with me for asking that. But personally, anytime I work with anybody, I am not going to be sitting here following your rules if you're not compensating me. I want to be able to be honest. And obviously, if you have a collaboration with somebody and you're being paid to say something, whatever, I want to ensure that whatever I can say can be honest, because I'm not going to sit here and be bought with money or, influence or whatever it may be, right? And I just felt kind of when I asked them about them compensating creators, they got really defensive about it, my interpretation of it. And I was like, okay, thanks for letting me know. And I kind of just left it. But I was planning to look more into the server when I had some free time and maybe make a video about it, but I wasn't going to become an influencer for the game, because I'm not going to be anybody's for lack of better terms, B word, where I'm basically just slaving away doing content for somebody that's not going to compensate me and constantly advertise their game when you're reaching out to me, asking me to advertise your game, but not offering any sort of compensation. It was just very bizarre. But regardless, I waited a little bit, and I guess they were upset with me, and they kicked me out of their server. Which was just kind of silly to me, because it's okay, if I'm not going to do exactly what you want, then I'm not of use to you, so you're just going to kick me and ignore me. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can play at that game. So for those of you guys that have been asking me a gazillion times to review a specific game or play a specific game that's kind of new to Roblox and I haven't, there's a specific reason for it. So just let that be known. But regardless, I think the whole content creator or being an influencer for a game is a very slippery slope, and I think a lot of people want to be influencers for a game because they want to be recognized, and I think there's nothing wrong with wanting to be recognized, and I think you deserve to be recognized, especially creators for games like Royal High and Dress to Impress and any game on Roblox. These games would not survive without content creators, because content creators, although most of them create content because they genuinely enjoy the game, that content works as free advertisement for these games, and the games have to do absolutely nothing. And content creators create hype, they create communities, they encourage people to play games. If you guys ever watched YouTubers back in the day, I watched LD Shadow Lady all the time, and I watched her play, what was it, One Life and stuff like that, and that got me back into Minecraft because she was playing it. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna play it. And so the whole circle of influencing is, I find, very strong among influencers, especially in the YouTube space. And so I do take particular issue when games don't directly compensate creators, or when there's like really strict rules that creators have to follow with no compensation or little leeway. Now, I don't necessarily feel as though this specific situation with Bloxburg was one of those situations. However, I do understand that games obviously want to uphold a certain standard, and if creators aren't fitting to that standard, they obviously have a right to kick them out of the program. However, I feel like, I don't know, I think they could have just left it to, you're not posting enough, thanks so much for being part of our program, feel free to reapply if you want to make more content. I feel like it got a little bit messy when they kept bringing up all these tiny little things, but I guess as a company, you obviously want to fully document everything, which is personally what I do. In my server, everything up and pretty recent, or I guess it hasn't been so much recent, but when I started my server, I made it so that everything is documented. That's why I have the ticket system, is because all the tickets get transcribed to a different platform where we keep a record of everything that is said to ensure that nothing can be taken out of context and whatever. So that's definitely something that I think a lot of companies do, and I would recommend any YouTuber, especially if you own a Discord server, to have a transcribing system so that everything is, documented, so there can be no miscommunications or allegations or whatever it may be, right? But regardless, I definitely do think this is a kind of a tricky situation because creators want to be part of programs, but unfortunately creator interests change, and especially when games don't necessarily have a ton of updates, or they aren't happy with the game, or the game isn't listening to them. Personally, I wouldn't be incentivized to keep making content for a game if I don't feel like they're hearing my perspective. But regardless, there's been some mixed opinions about Ashley's video. And I certainly think people are entitled to their opinions, but I definitely do think there's also a lot that goes on behind the scenes, specifically between the creators and the developers of the game. And unfortunately, as an outsider, I don't have any context to that. Maybe Ash will make another video and talk about it. But there's been some creators who've come to Instagram or Twitter afterwards and have made kind of posts about stuff kind of hinting at certain things, but I don't necessarily want to speculate because I'm not 100% sure. But regardless, you guys can go ahead and look on Twitter and see for yourselves. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Would you ever sign an NDA? Would you work for a game for free? Would you want to join an influencer program? I don't know, it's a hard decision to make, and obviously there's lots of points and aspects to it, but regardless, let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!